But I've had people making good points about Islam. And I think it's just a good idea to be like open-minded and have an open heart.
Yeah, there is no good points.
Welcome to Christianity over Islam. In today's exciting debate, Shamoun faces off with a passionate fan of SNEAKO who's also a devout Muslim. The question on the table: can Islam stand up to the tough truths about its theology? Watch as Shamoun challenges his beliefs and reveals some shocking truths about the Quran. Let's get started.
What's your background? You're 17, but what's like your religious background?
So I kind of just like looked into Christianity like a year ago. My parents aren't Christian or anything, but I just kind of like, I saw people online talking about Christianity, and it kind of just like, I got influenced by stuff like that. I started praying. I got a Bible. I was actually in LA like a couple months ago. I was walking by and I saw some street preachers, and I went up and talked to them, said, God bless you. They handed me a free Bible. So was into that a little. Admittedly, didn't probably read it as much as I should have. I'm still a Christian. I still consider myself to be Christian, but I've had people making good points about Islam. And I think it's just a good idea to be like open-minded and have an open heart.
Yeah, there is no good points. You may think they're good because you're young. You do not know. Islam has no good points. So, and I know this because I've been doing it since 1999.
I thought the word God like translated to Allah. That's what I've heard.
Even in the word God in English, you're a sharp kid, right?
Yeah, well, somewhat.
Okay, no, you are, but the Spirit of the Lord Jesus Christ sharpened you. Yeah, okay, the word God in English. You have a group of Hindus and a group of Buddhists who believe there's a God. You have then Zoroastrians, and then you have Muslims, and you have Jews, and you have Jehovah's Witnesses, and Mormons, and Christians. We all use the word God, right?
Yeah.
Do we have the same God in mind?
No.
Exactly. So
yeah, that's true. It could be any God.
Exactly. So just because there are Arabic-speaking Jews and Christians who use the word Allah, that doesn't mean Allah of the Quran is the true God. You understand the difference?
Yeah, I do understand the difference. At the same time, though, this is coming from you, and you are a Christian, so of course you are going to say that Islam is not real. I guess my biggest question for you would be like, how do I know certainly that like Christianity is it? Because like in the biggest thing about Islam that was convincing to me is they say that Jesus is sent by God as a prophet, but then people mistakenly worship Jesus as a prophet.
What's your proof? What's your proof that he was only sent as a prophet?
Well, I actually don't have the proof for that, but that's just the biggest, most convincing argument that I've heard.
How's it convincing if you don't have any historical proof from the first century that says that's what Jesus taught? So let me show you why you're not thinking logically. I'm going to have to take back what I said about you. So a man comes 600 years after Jesus was born who tells you that some spirit appeared to him in a cave, that he thought that the spirit was going to kill him. And then that spirit tells him Jesus is a prophet. And he has no first century contact with Jesus's followers. His book is written in a foreign place, in a foreign language Jesus didn't speak, and that's convincing to you. Yeah, I'm ready to become Muslim. So now give me the proof that this guy, Muhammad, who comes 600 years after the birth of Christ, he knows what he's talking about, and that he's qualified to tell me what Jesus taught in the first century. What's your proof?
So here's the thing, I'm definitely not qualified to debate you, nor am I trying to debate you. I'm not trying to debate here.
I know you're not debating me. I'm asking you questions to get you to think. You said it's convincing. How is it convincing that someone comes 600 years later and he's telling you what Jesus said in the first century, but if you ask him, where did you get this from? Oh, Allah inspired me. But hold on, Joseph Smith comes in the 1800s and he tells me the angel Moroni came to him and that gave him the Book of Mormon and golden plates that he then deciphered. And according to Joseph Smith, that angel told him that Jesus is Yahweh, the son of the Father, and Lucifer's older brother.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Like maybe I sound stupid here, but my thing is I'm like really just trying to think about everything. I know I probably don't sound like very smart here, but I'm really just trying to look into it.
No, it's not you're stupid. It's just because you're not thinking critically enough. You're intelligent, but at times you drop the ball. Because the first question I would say, why the hell should I accept what a man in the 7th century speaking Arabic tells me about Jesus who came in the 1st century when we have documents from the 1st century written within the first 2 generations of Jesus's followers that contradict what this man says? If you're a historian and you're just looking at history and you want to know about the historical Jesus, you would have to look at the oldest sources, the earliest sources, closest to the time of Christ, right?
Yeah.
What are they? The Quran?
No, it'd be the Bible, right?
Exactly. The Gospels and the letters of Paul. In point of fact, the Quran itself is an incoherent, unintelligible mishmash babble. Because if you just read the Quran, you cannot make heads or tails of when was this composed and by whom. Because the name Muhammad only appears 4 times in the Quran. Moreover, the Quran doesn't situate itself. It doesn't tell you in what century. This is why you have scholars who say that the Quran that you have was not composed in Mecca and Medina. It was actually composed in Petra, which is further north from Mecca and Medina, because all the extra Quranic sources, inscriptions show there was no thriving community in Mecca and Medina, and we don't have any sources that supposedly come from the time Muhammad lived to confirm that in that time Muhammad was known to be a prophet. Notice I said when he supposedly lived, because if I ask the Muslim, when did Muhammad live? 570 AD. How do you know this? Where does the Quran say that? It doesn't say it. They will then go to writings that were written over 100 years after the time of Muhammad. Some of them are 200 years after time Muhammad, that are looking back and telling you, oh yeah, Muhammad was born in the year of the elephant, and Muhammad did this and Muhammad did that. So now you're putting your stake on a book that you can't even tell me when it was composed, because the book itself doesn't situate itself, and the name Muhammad only appears 4 times, and you can't tell me whether that's the Muhammad of later tradition, and you're going to take what he says about what Jesus did in the 1st century.
Yeah, I see what you're saying, and also I've heard the argument too that like Jesus is mentioned like a whole bunch in the Quran too, and Jesus is mentioned like every single biblical kind of like scripture. So he's like mentioned the most. So I have heard
everyone wants Jesus. The Muslims want Jesus, the Buddhists want Jesus, the Hindus want Jesus, the Mormons want Jesus, because Jesus is the most influential figure in history, and everyone wants to make Jesus one of their own. But that was my first challenge to you. Secondly, the Quran itself offers as a proof of its genuineness. This is all throughout the Quran. Now they'll tell you the Bible's corrupt, and the Quran says the Bible's corrupt. They're lying to you. That's not true. The Quran offers, that's one of its proofs that it's from the same God of the Bible, is that it confirms the scriptures that the Jews and Christians were reading at the supposed time of Muhammad. So for argument's sake, I'm going to say in the 7th century, because Muhammad supposedly claimed that a spirit came to him and commissioned him to be a prophet in the year 610 AD when he was 40 years old. Okay, so at that time, whatever scriptures the Jews and Christians had, Muhammad said, I confirm those scriptures are authentic, preserved, and because my book agrees with them, that should convince you I'm a prophet. But then the Christian Jews said, your book doesn't agree with our book. It contradicts it on these very issues. You're telling me Jesus is only a prophet. My book says no, he's the Son of God, sent into the world to be worshipped. But even with that said, the Quran itself contradicts itself regarding Jesus. It contradicts itself because it will tell you that Jesus is the Word of God. And
does it actually say that? It says Jesus is the Word of God in the Quran?
Yes, buddy.
Let's see that.
You need to do a lot more studying than jump the gun and say, "Oh, it's convincing."
I haven't fully jumped the gun though. Like I said, I'm not a Muslim.
No, it's okay. What I'm saying is, what is so convincing that Jesus is just a prophet? Why do you think he's just a prophet? I don't. Well,
it kind of makes sense because he does come in like man form, and like the entire thing that like Jesus can be God and a man at the same time doesn't really make sense to me.
So, but since you're not God and you're not the standard of truth, why does it matter whether it makes sense to you or not?
Well, I don't know. When I go to accept a religion, I want to make sure like I understand it, you know? Not like,
so you mean
like blind faith.
Okay. So you mean to tell me that the very idea of God is a being that's infinitely complex, unlike anything creation, something that you can't fully grasp, a God who has no beginning, no end, who created the universe from nothing, things that we can't fully grasp. So you're mean to tell me you're going to accept those things that you don't fully grasp, but then reject the notion that the God who could speak the entire universe into being by his word effortlessly cannot become flesh without ceasing to be God. Yeah, I'm convinced, man. I want to take Shahada.
I mean, would you say that like a lot of Christianity, I guess religion in a whole, is just kind of having like blind faith?
I mean, no, not really. When you say a lot of faith, no, because Christianity says that Jesus has been raised from the dead. And if he's not been raised from the dead, Christianity's a joke. Don't be a Christian. That's what the Bible says. 1 Corinthians 15, you're told, if Jesus has not been raised, your faith is useless. Eat, drink, and be merry. Tomorrow you die. Don't waste your time on being a Christian.
Right. And also, like, Muslims say that they don't believe Jesus was crucified. I don't think I really believe that. Like, they had, like, a body double or something. I don't know if I believe that.
Okay, well, why not? You believe the Quran says that Jesus is just a man. Why not believe he wasn't crucified? So you're picking and choosing now. You're becoming the standard, right?
Yeah, I see what you mean. I do. But I do feel like it's just, like, a lot of blind faith. I guess that's with religion as a whole.
I mean, obviously, I don't see God visibly. I take the evidence that he's presented to take a step of faith because of the evidence he's given me and the conviction of the Spirit to show me that this evidence should convince me to trust in him. Yeah, in that sense, yes. But to say blind faith, that means you're simply believing anything and everything, irrespective if there's any evidence or against the evidence. That's blind faith for me. It is not blind faith if God has given me evidences and arguments to confidently lead me into saying, well, the evidence is overwhelming and solid enough to take this step of faith that this God exists, though I don't see. And by taking that step, he'll reward my taking that step to trust in him. And then he will convince me throughout time as I grow to love him, trust him more and more, how real he is. But Islam pretty much tells you to believe against the evidence. What do I mean? Against the evidence that Christ was killed. Against the evidence that the historical Jesus claimed to be God in the flesh. Against the evidence that his followers claimed that he's God in the flesh, died and rose again. And these are historical facts. These are not simply statements of faith. If you read any book by historians of Christianity, this is what they're going to tell you. Don't take my word for it. Go listen to Bart Ehrman, who's not a Christian, who's an agnostic atheist, who thinks that Jesus died, remained dead, and the Bible's full of errors. But when he applies the historical method, he'll tell you, this is what we can know about the historical Jesus. He was an apocalyptic preacher, preaching the end of the age. He was killed. His followers, he admits this, his followers, and he mentions two of them, Peter, Mary Magdalene, just two of several, believe that they saw Jesus alive after being killed, and that he was alive physically and bodily, and now he's in heaven, reigning physically, bodily as God alongside the Father. And that, what he calls vision, convinced them that the tomb is empty, Christ is alive, and they went preach that and even were willing to die for that claim. So he's admitting these are facts that you can establish historically. Now we have a problem though. He's saying the historical facts show that Jesus's followers, not people who came 100 years later, his own followers were convinced that they saw Jesus alive physically, bodily after he was killed. Mm-hmm. He calls it a bereavement vision because he doesn't believe in God and miracles. But because of that experience, they now believe Jesus is alive in heaven, and he's alive physically, and he's reigning as Lord, as the divine Son of God, and will return physically to judge living and dead, and they preach that. Well, then that shows Islam is a lie, because Islam says Jesus' followers were Muslim.
Yeah.
So how can the Quran be true to the facts of history when even historians who are investigating the origins of Christianity, and they don't believe in Christianity, say, one thing we know, Christ was killed by crucifixion. Another thing we know is that his followers claim that they saw him alive physically and bodily, and the tomb was empty, and that convinced them to start Christianity. No resurrection, no Christianity. But another individual that Muslims vilify. This is again what historians say. And I'll give you websites on it, on the evidence for the resurrection. Paul was an opponent of the Christian faith, tried to destroy it, had Christians in prison and killed. All of a sudden, he becomes one of its greatest evangelists and theologians. Why? Well, he claimed that on his way to Damascus, he and those accompanying him as he's going to Damascus in Syria to arrest Christians for what he believed was blasphemy, for worshiping a Jew, a light shine, knocked him down, blinded him, and he heard the voice say to him, Saul, Saul, why do you persecute me? He goes, who are you, Lord? I am Jesus, whom you're persecuting. And he was convinced, because of that vision, Jesus is not dead, but he's alive physically, bodily, and he reigns in heaven as Lord. And he was wrong for thinking that Jesus was a false Messiah. Then he joined the disciples of Jesus. He met Peter, James, and John, and they confirmed what he saw and what he heard and what he preaches is the very thing they saw, heard, and are preaching. And he joined them in spreading Christianity. So now how do we account for a hostile enemy of the church who wanted to destroy the Christian faith, who hated Jesus and his followers, converting and dying as a martyr? And he never recanted and backed down or shrieked down from saying, I saw Jesus alive. He is not dead. He is alive. He is Lord, and I worship him. What are you going to do with these facts? Because these are facts. These are, I'm not telling, and by the way, I'm not saying that a partner says, yeah, Paul saw Jesus alive. He goes, no. He was hallucinating. Okay, that's fine. Whether you think it's hallucination, the fact remains. They were convinced they were not hallucinating. They were convinced, they saw him physically alive, and he's alive in heaven will return, and that led them to worship him and spread Christianity.
And they're willing to die for it too. Do Muslims believe that they're just hallucinating when they saw Jesus alive?
They don't think that the disciples would have seen Jesus alive.
But that doesn't make sense, because why would they die for that belief?
Well, they don't think they died for proclaiming Christianity. This is why I say to be a Muslim is to go against the facts of history.
I'm not gonna lie, man. You are definitely opening my mind here. You're making me think different.
Well, that's not me. That's the Spirit helping you to see.
Have you spoke with SNEAKO, and like, why do you think he became a Muslim?
Well, for the same reason, many people, almost like you, almost fell into, because they present an Islam that sounds rational, coherent, and simple. But let me show you the black stone, which they don't show you, right? If you ask the Muslims before Muhammad, the pagans in Arabia, did they run around the Kaaba 7 times? The Kaaba, the black cube? Yes. Did they throw 7 stones at Wadi Minna? Right? Yes. Did they run between the 2 hills? It's called Safa and Marwa 7 times? Yes. So the pagans were doing this, right? Yes. Did the pagans also touch and kiss the black stone? Yes. Why are you doing it when these are all pagan practices?
So is this something that like SNEAKO has done too? Because I saw he went to Mecca. Did he he ran around 7 times and then went and touched a stone?
Yes. He has to. Here, let me show it to you. Yes.
What?
Yes, brother. Narrated Abu Raja al-Utaridi. We used to worship stones. See? The pagans.
Muslims don't actually worship stones, right?
No. This is talking about the pagans.
Right.
But understand, who venerated stones and kissed them? The pagans, right?
Yeah.
So why did Muhammad do it after he became a monotheist?
Couldn't tell you.
Neither can they. But anyway, I'm going to show it to you. We used to worship stones, and when we found a better stone than the first one, we would throw the first one and take the latter. So you get the idea. We pagans used to worship stones because they believed the stones were symbols of gods. All right, Muslims say, no, we don't worship idols. Okay, but hold on. Here you go. Sahih Bukhari, volume 2, book 26, number 667. You click here. Here it is, Muslim website. Narrated Abbas bin Rabi'a. Umar is the second caliph. He was Muhammad's father-in-law, because Muhammad married his daughter, came near the black stone and kissed it. Why? And said, no doubt, I know that you are a stone and can neither benefit anyone nor harm anyone. Had I not seen Allah's apostle kissing you, I would not have kissed you. They didn't tell you this, huh?
No, I heard nothing about this, to be honest.
Wow, I'm shocked. No, I'm not.
All right, I think when I do come back, because I would love to come back on and talk, I think it'll have to be another day, because I am kind of like
anytime
for the rest of my day, but I really do appreciate it.
Say, hey, Sam says, join me. Tell a Muslim saying, hey, Sam, tell Uthman. Say, hey, Uthman, can you join me and refute Sam? You bring any Muslim. I'm telling you, see, it's recorded. So if I'm lying, you got to record it. Say, Sam is open to having any of you Muslims join me so you can respond, because I don't know any better. Watch how they're going to run like Aisha did with her dolls. All right?
Okay. All right. Well, God bless you very much for taking the time to do this, and you definitely made me think different, so.
God bless you.
The young man mentions his limited religious background and recent interest in Christianity. He says he began praying and reading the Bible due to the influence of online Christian discussions, street encounters, and receiving a Bible from preachers. However, he admits he hasn't deeply read the Bible and is now considering Islamic arguments as well. Shamoun quickly interjects, asserting that Islam has no good points and questions the young man's logical reasoning. He emphasizes that Islam's claims about Jesus are historically unsubstantiated and encourages him to think critically. This sets the stage for an intense back and forth where Sam aims to question the rationality behind accepting Islamic beliefs, especially regarding Jesus. Sam systematically challenges the young man's view that Islam's perspective on Jesus as a prophet is convincing. He argues that historical evidence does not support Islam's claim that Jesus was merely a prophet and underscores that Christianity, grounded in first-century texts, presents Jesus as the Son of God. He highlights the discrepancy between Islamic texts, which came centuries later, and the first-hand Christian accounts of Jesus' life and resurrection. Sam introduces the concept of the historical method, arguing that Christianity is based on documents close to the events they describe, unlike the Quran, which lacks contextual evidence and specifics about Muhammad. By doing so, Sam attempts to demonstrate that Christianity has a stronger historical foundation than Islam. The young man expresses difficulty in reconciling the notion of Jesus as both divine and human. Sam responds by encouraging him to trust in the mystery of God's nature and warns against rejecting concepts simply because they are difficult to understand. He introduces the idea that a true faith should be based on compelling evidence and historical grounding, rather than blind acceptance. Sam emphasizes that Christianity's core claim, the resurrection of Jesus, has historical grounding. He contrasts this with the Quran's denial of the crucifixion, a stance that goes against historical consensus. He reinforces that even secular scholars acknowledge that early Christians were convinced of Jesus' resurrection, which led to the spread of Christianity. Sam's method here aims to dismantle Islamic claims by portraying them as contradictory to non-historical facts. He positions Islam's denial of Jesus' crucifixion as an irrational departure from historical evidence and calls on the young man to question Islamic teachings on Jesus, which contradict the early accounts and beliefs of Jesus' followers. Finally, Sam introduces the idea that some Islamic rituals, such as circling the Kaaba and kissing the black stone, may have pagan origins. By pointing this out, he aims to cast doubt on the authenticity of these practices and their association with monotheism, potentially undermining the young man's perception of Islam's claim to truth. This debate segment focuses on Sam's attempt to emphasize historical authenticity and rationality as a foundation for faith. By questioning the coherence of Islamic teachings and practices, he tries to shift the young man's perspective back toward Christianity. Sam's approach may feel aggressive but is centered on using logic and historical claims to make Christianity appear as the more reasonable choice. The young man's openness to questioning shows his desire for understanding, though he acknowledges his lack of depth in both religious knowledge and logical rigor. This leaves room for Sam to fill in gaps with Christian teachings and critiques of Islamic beliefs, seeking to sway the young man by emphasizing critical thinking and the historical basis of Christian claims. That's all for today's debate. Did Sam Shamoun successfully expose the contradictions in Islam, or did the SNEAKO fan hold his ground? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this debate, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more Manifest Live content. See you in the next video.